I know it's been a long wait, but Tale of the Tape is finally back. We're going to be breaking down all of the biggest Dynasty fantasy football prospects that you guys want to know about from start to finish, telling the whole story from high school up until the NFL draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. is on deck today. Of course, we will be breaking down everything from his traits to his athletic testing, size, age, speed, all that good stuff will be covered in today's video. If you're new around here, leave a subscribe down below. If you guys are Dynasty fantasy football players, you're going to want to keep it tapped in right here. Leave a like if you enjoy. Now let's get into it. All right, Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver of the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is his tale of the tape. He stands 6'3" and some change, 209 pounds. He was one of the only wide receivers not to actually test at the NFL Combine, but he was born August 11th, 2002, making him just under 22 years old. On the night of the NFL Draft, will be 22 entering his rookie season. He's, of course, the son of Colts Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison Sr., four-star recruit to the Ohio State University. In 2021, he did sit behind Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, all future first-round NFL draft picks during his freshman season, so he didn't see the field very much, which is understandable. But in 2022, with C.J. Stroud, he broke out, of course, posting a monster 118 targets, 77 catches, 1,263 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns, was a top 5 graded wide receiver according to PFF, the number 1 graded wide receiver in the Power 5 according to PFF, and he was a finalist for the Biletnikoff Award for the nation's best wide receiver. That award actually went to Jalen Hyatt, but I do think Marvin should have won it in 2022. In 2023, he posted yet another great season despite C.J. Stroud going on to have success in the NFL. He was stuck with Kyle McCord at Ohio State despite being a major downgrade at quarterback. We had 114 targets, 1,211 receiving yards, again, scoring 14 touchdowns, and again, a top 5 graded wide receiver in the Power 5. In 2023, he did win the Biletnikoff Award, going over 100 yards and or scoring a touchdown in every single game except for 2 early on in the season, despite that shaky quarterback play. He's expected to be a top 5 NFL draft pick. I'm sure all of you guys know at this point that he's either going to the Patriots, to the Cardinals. Worst case scenario, he falls number 5 overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. The consensus has him going number 4 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. The accomplishments, I think, are well documented with Marvin Harrison at this point, so let's get right into the traits. And unfortunately, this year and years past, I've been able to show kind of film clips while I'm talking. Unfortunately, we got dinged last year by YouTube for doing that, so we won't be having any film as I'm going through this, but we're doing something a little bit differently. If you guys want a full film breakdown from me and Danny, we're going to have that on the site on flockfantasy.com. That'll be linked down below in the description, breaking down all 22. The one for Marvin Harrison is live today, so if you guys want to see us break down Marvin and all of the other prospects, definitely check out Flock Fantasy. But let's get into the fundamental traits of wide receivers. And a reminder from last year, the fundamental traits, mainly the scale that I grade on, are based on route running and separation. So obviously, how well can you get open versus man coverage, zone coverage, press coverage. Hands, how are your hands an asset? Can you make contested catches? Can you make good body control outside your frame type of catches along the sidelines? Then you have yards after catch ability. What do you do once you actually get the ball? How fluid of a mover are you in space? Can you make people miss? Can you power through them after contact? Then we have the ability to affect all 3 levels of the field, because we have a lot of receivers in this class that are just downfield threats, a lot of guys that are just kind of slot receivers, just short area threats, good design touches guys. Can you affect all 3 levels of the field is definitely the mark of a great fantasy wide receiver. Number 5, we have athleticism, of course, measured by relative athletic score from Kent Lee Plant on Twitter, 40 times, burst score, size. How did that athleticism show up in games as well? We want to know game speed and that kind of thing. And then finally, we have their production or their analytics profile, which I factor in things like yards per route run, their target share, yards per team pass attempt, their age, their experience, adjusted numbers, the level of competition they played against, all that stuff factors into their production profile. So let's get into the first fundamental trait, and that is route running / separation. And of course, he is Marvin Harrison's son. Of course, he is going to be good in this area. This should come as absolutely no shock that he can separate at a high level. Marvin Harrison Jr. has something different than Marvin Harrison Sr. He has an alpha X wide receiver frame of 6'3", 210 pounds that aids is his ability to win on all three levels of the field, all three phases of his route. He is excellent at the release point, as me and Danny documented in the film breakdown against press coverage. He was going up against Michigan's Will Johnson, who is expected to be a high-end pick in the 2025 NFL draft. He's very strong, very physical, and surprisingly very fluid for his size too. You're not going to see a whole lot of 6'3", 210-pound wide receivers move and create separation the way that Marvin Harrison does. He is not like your average 6'3", 210-pound wide receiver. He creates separation like a 5'11", 180-pounder. And then at the top of his routes, because he has that size, he can shield defenders away from the ball. He's very physical at the top of his route. It really shows that he has a Hall of Fame father. His hips, his footwork, they're all impeccable, and he routinely breaks off defenders at the top of his routes. He's really savvy in this area. He knows how to attack a cornerback's leverage, especially when they get inside the blind side or when they're playing outside leverage, inside leverage. Marvin Harrison understands all of that. He knows that when a cornerback flips their hips, he knows to break it to the sideline, break it upfield, whatever the route dictates. He is the smartest route runner I have scouted since Devontae Smith, which is saying a lot given the size discrepancy between those two guys. So, second fundamental trait we have is hands. And again, this factors in everything from body control to contested catch ability, drops, all that kind of stuff. This is one area that Marvin has actually received some criticism in because it's one of the only things you can poke holes in terms of his game, because he did have 6 drops this year. But again, as I've talked about in years past, concentration drops are not something that I really care about all that much. My attitude towards hands is this: as long as they're not a liability for you, your hands are so bad that you can't make contested catches routinely, you can't make catches through contact routinely, then I'm not really concerned about it. I think everybody at the wide receiver position that's going to get drafted in the first round needs to hit a certain threshold, and then once they hit it, it's, gravy if you have better hands than the average wide receivers, because drops, while they matter to some degree, the leaders in drops this year were Puka Nacua with 13, Tyreek Hill with 10, Devontae Adams with 9, Mike Evans and Stephon Diggs with 8. All of those guys were elite fantasy wide receivers. All of those guys were elite NFL wide receivers last year. So yeah, Marvin Harrison dropped 6 passes this past year on 114 targets, and his contested catch rate from 2022, when he had CJ Stroud, fell from 60% to 43.3% with Kyle McCord. But again, contested catch rate is a quarterback stat also. It takes into account where the ball placement is, and I feel very confident that Marvin Harrison Jr. has elite hands and has no problems translating into the next level. Of course, the drops factored into my grade a little bit, but not really a whole lot. So number 3 on this list is yards after catch ability, right? Get open, catch the ball, do something with it. Look, he's 6'3", 210 pounds. He's not going to win after the catch like Zay Flowers or like Tank Dell or somebody like that. However, this is the really impressive thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. 6.4 yards after catch per reception is a very decent number. It was actually top 10 in the class this year. And when you look at the guys that he's surrounded by, him and Malachi Corley were the only 2 guys that were above 200 pounds. Every other guy that had this kind of yards after catch per reception mark was a small receiver, a Jacob Cowing, Jamari Thrash, these type of guys. With Marvin Harrison, he's being targeted way down the field, 13.1 average depth of target, and posting a yards after catch number that usually yards after catch threats like a Jacob Cowing would have. Those numbers are not inflated by the fact that he's getting a bunch of design touches, a bunch of screens, is all the more impressive for Marvin Harrison. He's a fluid mover in the open field. Simply put, there's not that many big wide receivers that can move after the catch like Marvin Harrison. Even though he's not special in this area, he is very, very good. He can turn a 6-yard curl route into a 15-yard gain like he did against Michigan and Will Johnson, like me and Danny broke down in the film breakdown. Number 4, in terms of fundamental traits here, is 3-level ability, right? Can you affect all 3 levels of the field? Short, intermediate, behind the line of scrimmage, and deep. You don't want a wide receiver that just gets design touches. We also don't want a wide receiver that runs wind sprints all game. Average depth of target for Marvin Harrison Jr. of 13.1 yards and 14.3 yards the last 2 seasons in college. He is a fantastic wide receiver projection in the NFL. There is tons of wide receivers in this class who have very refined skill sets to either do one thing or the other, but not many wide receivers, the top 3 guys all have this, that can do everything on the field. Short targets, design touches, intermediate routes, deep targets. Marvin can do everything in the playbook. He's got the speed to get vertical. He's got the size and the route running to win intermediate and vertical. And he also is athletic enough to give him design touches, to give him those short targets. And he's smart enough to beat zone coverage as well. He is very, very gifted. One of the best 3-level threats I've seen in a number of years. Number 5 on this list is athleticism. And part of the reason we talk about athleticism for wide receivers is because we want to talk about it in relation to how they win. Of course, athleticism in general is not really correlated to wide receiver success. When a wide receiver wins with size and physicality and vertical ability and speed, you want to see them test well in those areas. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get to see Marvin Harrison test at the NFL Combine, and to be honest, I don't think he's going to test at his pro day either. Thankfully, though, I have no concerns with how good of an athlete this guy is because he was clocked at 22.2 miles per hour in-game speed, according to Real Analytics, on his touchdown against Youngstown State. That was the 4th fastest mark of any wide receiver in this class, and the guys that beat him, Xavier Worthy, who broke the 40-yard dash record, Troy Franklin, who ran a 4.40 at the Combine, Xavier Legette, who ran in the 4.3s. He had a better in-game speed time than Brian Thomas Jr., Adonai Mitchell, and Ladd McConkey, all of whom ran in the 4.3s. So I have no questions that if Marvin Harrison had ran at the NFL Combine, he would have ran in the 4.4s at minimum, probably in the 4.3s as well. I'm sure he would have jumped high. I'm sure he would have had good agility scores. He probably would have posted a 9+ RAS score according to Math Bomb. Maybe he'll do stuff at his pro day, but I highly doubt it. Regardless, I'm checking the box for athleticism. He is absolutely a great athlete. And then finally, number 6, we get into the nitty gritty with his numbers. And Marvin Harrison Jr. was basically built in a lab as far as wide receiver prospects go on paper because, I mean, looking at his profile, there is very, very little that you can poke holes in. He went to a massive school. He played in big-time games against the University of Georgia and so on and so forth. If the Buckeyes don't lose Marvin Harrison in that game 2 years ago in the college football playoffs, the Ohio State Buckeyes probably win the national championship that year. Marvin Harrison was that crucial to that game plan that him going down was a massive blow to Ohio State's chances of winning. And again, going all the way down to the conference he played in, the fact that he has family ties to the NFL, his dad was a Hall of Famer, the size, the athleticism, all those boxes are checked. Then you get into his actual production. The highlights of his profile include this. He was 3.4 best season yards per route run. That is 3rd best in the class. So market share production, he was one of the most dominant wide receivers in the class, playing alongside NFL caliber wide receivers in his own core with Emeka Egbuka, JSN, those type of guys. 20% career touchdown rate. That is best in the class. Again, playing with really good competition. 30.4% best season target share. 4th best in the class. Despite sharing the field with Egbuka, with JSN, of course, probably with other guys that are going to hear their name called in the NFL because it's Ohio State and they're a wide receiver factory. Top 5 PFF receiving grade among Power 5 wide receivers in 2022 and in 2023. And of course, in 2022, he led the country in PFF receiving grade in the Power 5. 4.46 yards per route run against zone coverage. As I talked about already, very good route runner against zone. That was the best number in the class that anybody posted. 3.15 against man. That was a top 5 mark in the class that anybody posted. It's so difficult to poke holes in his profile. It's very, very hard to do. Do not overthink Marvin Harrison Jr.'s profile. He checks pretty much every box that you can possibly go after. And on top of that, he has a lot of unselfishness to his game. He's a very good run blocker. As I discussed, he's highly intelligent. His football IQ is going to translate to the next level. And the grade that I gave him in terms of smarts and football IQ, the only other time I've given a perfect grade to a prospect was Devontae Smith in 2021. And those two guys, very, very savvy players. He's also tough as nails, has that dog mentality, and literally made play after play while being pass interfered with against Michigan and against Penn State specifically in those tapes. I noticed him getting grabbed and, pulled at a lot, and he was still fighting through contact and making catches. So when it comes to my final grade of Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, it should be no doubt in your mind that it's going to be high. The question is how high. So previously my grading scale had been out of 1100. I refined it to be out of 100 to make it easier to understand for you guys. So my final grade for Marvin Harrison Jr. came out to be 95.5 out of 100. That is the highest grade I've ever given a wide receiver. It's also the highest grade I've ever given a player in general since I've been scouting prospects since 2020. The second highest grade going to Trevor Lawrence and Bijan Robinson and those type of guys. Marvin Harrison Jr., in my estimation, is a transcendent prospect, a wide receiver prospect that comes out once every 10 to 15 years. I know that phrase is overused, but I'm telling you it is true for Marvin Harrison Jr. Previously, my highest graded wide receiver was Jamar Chase, then Devontae Smith, and then also another one of the guys in this class has the same grade as I had on Devontae Smith. So when it comes to biggest strengths for Marvin, especially that football IQ factor, the pedigree, the profile, the hands, the route running, all of it checks across the board. Pretty much everything is a strength for this guy, minus some concentration drops here and there, and the fact that he isn't special after the catch. He's good after the catch, he's just not special after the catch. In terms of my pro comparison for Marvin Harrison Jr., I see a lot of similarities between Marvin Harrison and AJ Green. I think that's been a very popular one. I see a lot of similarities between Marvin Harrison, even in CeeDee Lamb a little bit. Julio Jones also is one guy that I've talked about as well as a comparison. But ultimately, the reason that I have compared him to Larry Fitzgerald is because of that football IQ factor. The fact that he has the ability to run routes at a high level. He has that elite athleticism. They're basically the same size dimensions. And also, too, to top it all off, it looks like he's going to get drafted by the Arizona Cardinals and go and replace Larry Fitzgerald. So for me, I think the ideal landing spot for Marvin from a dynasty rookie draft standpoint is probably going to a team that needs an alpha wide receiver one, because I really don't care where this guy goes. He is the best wide receiver prospect I've ever seen. So if he goes to the Patriots, I'm still going to be all the way in on him, but I'm guessing he's going to either go to the Cardinals at 4 or to the Chargers at 5. I think that the Cardinals represent the best landing spot for him, because I think the Chargers are probably going to go a little bit more run heavy with Jim Harbaugh in town. So I actually really love the fact that he could go to the Cardinals at number 4 overall, and I expect that's where he actually gets drafted too. So in terms of rookie draft outlook, if you guys are wondering where should I take this guy in a rookie draft, where should I take him in a startup draft, among veterans, if you guys are in a startup, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. as my dynasty wide receiver 4. So outside of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb, I believe he is worthy, along with probably Amon-Ra St. Brown, as that next tier of wide receivers. You could take him with a back-end first-round startup pick, early second-round startup pick in Superflex drafts, and I would feel very confident in that top 6 startup pick in one quarterback leagues. So when it comes to actual rookie drafts, I'm okay taking him as high as 102 behind Caleb Williams in Superflex drafts. The only way I would consider taking Drake May over him, or anybody else for that matter, is if Drake May goes to the Minnesota Vikings in a trade-up scenario, because obviously that's a very good landing spot for him. He would have value insulation as a quarterback. But with Marvin Harrison, I mean, to me, he's a absolute locked and loaded 102 in Superflex type of pick wherever he goes, as well as a locked and loaded 101 pick in one quarterback league. So hopefully you guys got some value from this video. Not really a lot to talk negatively about Marvin Harrison. I'm sure a lot of you guys were probably expecting me to gush over him. That's just how good of a prospect he is. But we are going to be talking about Malik Neighbors. We are going to be talking about Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., the quarterback position, the running back position. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more critiques about those players, because not all of them are generational prospects. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you made it to this point in the video, comment down below. Tail of the tape is back. And of course, as I mentioned, unfortunately, we weren't able to play any film clips throughout this video, but if you do want to see some film clips of Marvin Harrison Jr., me and Danny just dropped our all 22 film breakdown of Marvin Harrison Jr. That is on the site right now. Head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE for a 7-day free trial to check that out. You also get 30% off with that promo code, 6 months for free if you sign up annually. And of course, our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, the Dynasty Wall Street Journal 2.0, is live right now with 50 players, with write-ups, with player cards, everything that you guys need to dominate your rookie draft, including our top 50 overall Superflex and one quarterback rookie rankings. The best place to be if you're a Dynasty player is Flock Fantasy. From film breakdowns to our draft guide, all of the other creators' guides on the site right now, bonus content, priority to Dynasty decisions episodes, our Dynasty and rookie rankings, trade value charts, these player cards, and so much more. Make sure you're checking out the site if you guys got some value from this video. I promise you will get a ton of value from our site as well. So link down below for that in the pinned comment and in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.